Good morning, and welcome to Quiet Echo. I'm Teresa Nikas, and this is from the editor's desk where we take a few minutes each Monday to look at the week's headlines through the lens of the values that hold our little town together. Faith, family, responsibility, and plain old common sense. It's December 22nd. Christmas is 3 days away. And I want to tell you a story that feels, to me, like it belongs in this week more than any other. Last Thursday, President Trump signed a bill called the Lumbee Fairness Act. And with that signature, the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina became the 575th federally recognized tribe in the United States. Now, that might sound like bureaucratic news. Recognition. Federal status. Benefits eligibility. But here's the number that stopped me cold: 137 years. That's how long the Lumbee have been fighting for this. The state of North Carolina recognized them in 1885. President Eisenhower signed a bill acknowledging them in 1956, but that bill, for reasons that made sense to politicians at the time, withheld the benefits that should have come with it. And so began the long walk. Generation after generation of Lumbee leaders made the trip to Washington. They testified before committees. They watched bills pass the House 9 times, by the way. 9 times the House said yes and Lee to die in the Senate. They went home. They raised their children. They told them the stories. And then those children grew up and made the same trip themselves. Chairman John Lowery was at the White House for the signing. There's video of him weeping. He said something that I haven't been able to shake: "I know with every fiber of my being that our ancestors are smiling down on us today." And then he said this, and I want you to hear it. "I'm so thankful to be the last chairman that's had to come to D.C., fighting, pushing, advocating for our full federal recognition." The last chairman. His children won't have to make that fight. His grandchildren won't grow up wondering if Washington will ever keep its word. That chapter is closed. Now, I've been thinking about why this story hit me the way it did. And I think it's because we don't tell enough stories about patience anymore. We live in a world that wants everything now. Instant results. Immediate gratification. If something doesn't work in a news cycle, we move on. If a cause doesn't trend, it must not matter. But the Lumbee didn't trend. For most of those 137 years, nobody outside of North Carolina was paying much attention. They just kept showing up. Kept making the case. Kept believing that the promise would eventually be honored. That's not passive waiting. That's the hardest kind of strength there is. It's the kind of faith that plants trees whose shade you'll never sit under. The kind of love that builds something for your grandchildren, not yourself. Here in Cedar Valley, we know something about that. We've all got those long roads we're walking. Maybe it's a family member who's been struggling, and you've been praying for years without seeing the answer. Maybe it's a wrong that hasn't been righted, a door that hasn't opened, a promise that someone made to you that's still sitting there, unkept. The Lumbee story doesn't mean every long wait ends in victory. We know better than that. But it does mean that faithfulness matters. That showing up matters. That the people who keep their commitments across generations, who pass the torch, instead of dropping it sometimes, get to see the dawn. Let me give you a little more of the picture here, because I think it matters. The Lumbee are the largest tribe east of the Mississippi River, about 55,000 members, most of them in Robeson County in southeastern North Carolina. With federal recognition, they'll now have access to health care through the Indian Health Service, education funding, housing assistance, and disaster relief. The kind of support that other recognized tribes have received for decades. There were opponents. Some other tribes argued the Lumbee hadn't gone through the proper federal acknowledgement process. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, the only previously recognized tribe in North Carolina, opposed it. Politics got tangled up in ET's politics does. But here's what I keep coming back to: messy victories are still victories. Flawed journeys still get you somewhere. And a promise kept late is still a promise kept. President Trump made this a priority. He'd promised on the campaign trail to support recognition, and he followed through. Senators from both parties in North Carolina pushed for it. Governor Stein, a Democrat, celebrated it. This wasn't a partisan story in the end. It was a story about finishing something that should have been finished a long time ago. As we head into these last few days before Christmas, I want to leave you with that image of Chairman Lowery, standing in the White House, tears on his face, speaking for generations who never got to stand where he was standing. Sometimes the longest roads do lead somewhere. Sometimes prayers get answered not on our schedule, but answered. And sometimes, just sometimes, a nation keeps its word. From Cedar Valley, this has been Quiet Echo. I'm Teresa Nikas. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open.